Good evening, welcome one and all to round 6 of the oNiD Community Racing Sim Hound British oNiD4 series here at Silverstone National. Shorter variation of the circuit, incorporating the older side of the circuit, where so many classic races have taken part from the old pit lane. And yes, a bit of a shorter track for these open wheelers to contend with this evening. We are just briefly waiting my co-commentators come and join us in the comms booth. They will be with us in a moment, but will be Scotty alongside with us, and when they do appear, I'm sure it'll be absolutely grand. Plus, just to throw a bit of mayhem into the works, it's a little bit damp. Well, it has been a little bit damp. It's currently not raining, but rain has been present.
Sorry about that.
And we should have... Oh, there you are. Hello, Scotty. All right. Good evening.
Oh, hello. Sorry, I didn't know I was coming into the com box. It has been a little bit busy. Yes, we're into qualifying, aren't we?
We are indeed, and as I was saying with what I was saying with things at the moment, it is a little bit damp, isn't it? It's a bit of rain, a bit of moisture on circuit. As I'm totally prepared, I'm trying to set up a stream for our co-commentator to see. So let's get that sorted for Scotty as we just wait a brief moment. We'll actually go to the circuit and get some cars on the screen, shall we? As qualifying, we said, is underway as of this moment, and it is currently Oliver Stone on top at the moment. Interestingly, we do have some a mixture of drivers on the dry and wet tyres. So track conditions are improving. Sometimes on there with the dry tyre. And it looks like people are trying to improve.
Yeah, so there was rain in the practice session that the drivers started to acclimatise themselves with. That rain is kind of easing off into this qualifying session, so the track will be getting, will be drying out a little bit, will be getting quicker throughout the session, and it could be a case of last lap matters, but there is still a bit of rain in the air, so it could come back a little bit. It's not certain, let's just say. So yeah, it's important for all the drivers to be out there, putting laps in, making sure they're making the most of every lap, as you never know when the perfect moment of the session is going to be, when it's going to be at its quickest. Do see, apparently a couple of cars are on dry tyres, so maybe the track is drying up enough to go on dry tyres. If you are going to change over, you'll want to switch early, so you have time to get the tyres up to temperature. Otherwise, if they're just cold on a damp track, you'll be sliding around, struggling to improve your lap time. And drivers will, of course, have to be careful about the curbs. They are very slippery, and you can very easily have a bit of slip and slide if you find yourself using them a little too much.
Absolutely. It's curious to see these guys some of these guys on a drier tyre getting, well, if somehow finding the grip. Our timing screens are live and up to date with data. You see it's the sliding nature of the cars. Ollie Stone getting the power down. He is I don't think he's quite improving on this lap. We will just stick with him and just see if we can jump on board on the gyro camera. Not too much undulation of circuit, but they're definitely slick tyres, as you can see. No grooves in them. He goes that's a lot of understeer, and he's still understeering, and he's not finding the time on this lap. There's still puddles of water on the circuit as well. He's drifting through the final turn.
But you can see there is just a dry line that is starting to form, but there still seems to be quite a bit of spray. I'm getting very mixed signals from this track. Only the drivers can tell whether it is advantageous to be on the slicks or whether they should still be on the wets. But you know, it's a very difficult decision at this point. Do you want to be that driver that sticks out on the wet tires when all the slick runners start going quicker, or do you go onto slicks and then it's like, oh, hang on, that's the wrong tire to be on, bail after one lap, and then have someone else who went out on the slicks, did 5 more laps than you, and actually find the grip and put themselves top of the timetable? it's a very difficult decision to make. We'll not know what the right answer is until this qualifying session is done. But there is 6 minutes for the drivers to improve around here. Also, Silverstone National short lap means that they're getting quite a few laps in around here, as we have sub 1 minute lap times even in these damp conditions.
Indeed it is. 18 drivers to race this evening, so nice showing from all. And a fantastic list is that there's been a new follow from the community. Thank you so much. I can't in life of me pronounce what that name is, but thank you so much for your support. Wonderful to have you with us this evening for the 6th round of the oNiD4 Championship powered by Sim Hound.
Yeah, we're getting a far way into the season now. Not many rounds to go. Just Brands Hatch and Spa coming up. And correct me if I'm wrong, isn't this our first wet round of the season? I'm pretty sure it is.
Yes.
Yes, so that with the new tire model as well. Quite love sort of getting used to love learning to happen this week. Of course, we did have the new tires last week, but that was in the Dragon. As we see, Nigel Stock here in the Braun livery has put themselves to the top, and that is on a set of slick tires.
It is.
I believe it is. Yeah, so showing that, yeah, the slick tire is coming into play, is proving to be the better tire. And with 4.5 minutes to go, we can see there are more drivers changing on to the slicks. We still have 6 drivers holding out on wet tires. Wonder if they can maybe find a late lap, though. I imagine if you're going to have a set of wet tires on, maybe worth even just going in and changing onto a new set of slicks rather than running on slick tires that might be 10 minutes old by this stage. Not even faster lap from Nigel Stock at the top of the timetables. They seem to be the most confident with these conditions on slick tires, certainly getting them up to temperature. Ben Brown has put themselves into P4 but is going back to pit lane. I wonder maybe what's he thinking of the slick tires? It's coming straight back out, of course. Driver Ben mentioning to me earlier on in season when he joined in the comments box for Snetterton that if you have a slide on the tire, that's when you can really damage the tire and when it can be a bit more of a struggle. So if you have a spin, very easily done in these conditions on slick tires, that might just sort of really hurt your qualifying run and might necessitate a trip through back to the pits to put a new set of slicks on, as Luca Munro has bumped themselves up to P2.
Indeed they have. Nigel Stock's about to come to the line on dry tyres. Oh, got held up by there for someone. Not quite sure that was car number 8, which I believe was Adrian Rich, who's down in 16th car. He goes very wide, does Adrian, and that is not an improvement. Oh, and that is Adrian Rich, I believe, having a spin. And this might have been Baton for Terry, I just stand corrected, but not an improvement yet for Nigel Stock. 59.1 is the best he's done, and oh no, dry tyres on a very drying track. It's still a little bit damp. That is not going to help his cause.
Very easily done when you're trying to push to get the absolute most out of the session. We see Ben Holmes doing the same, coming out of Maggots through the shortcut that leads you onto the Wellington Straight. Easily done. Look at the sliding there from Mike Pfeiffer's, who currently sits in P9, and he's still on the wet tire and sliding around. But of course, in these drying conditions, wet tire will be starting to overheat a little bit and will be sliding around. Could be sliding around just as much as the slick tire, which will obviously be a little bit stiffer, give a little more precision than the grooved wet tire. But yeah, Mike Pfeiffer's will have to go again. Currently sitting P9, can see the grooves of that tire as we go on board. Couple cars sliding out wide, and Pfeiffer's just understeering there. Those wet tires I don't think are providing the grip anymore. Even if there is a couple of puddles left on the track, I don't think it's enough. And Oliver Stone on the slick tires into the 58s, and look at Monroe so close, 200ths off, will only take P2 again.
There is a dry line forming, you can see it, especially through the final turn. There are still some puddles on the curb on the inside of these corners, but there's absolutely a dry line forming, and the grip is coming and coming and coming for these drivers quicker and quicker and quicker.
Yeah, it could be a case of making sure you get your final lap in just before the 15-minute timer ends. Remember, as we have a minute left here of the session immediately ends when we hit 15 minutes. There's no finishing your final lap. It just ends. So it's important to make sure you have crossed the line, you have finished your lap, and anyone crossing the line now will not be getting another lap in. Spin for Peter Stather as they try and pick the throttle up out of Lovefield. Just gone to the curb a little bit as we see Oliver Stone continuing to improve out front, just showing how the track is improving. Luca Munro again improves, this time 700ths off on their final flying lap. So you see Mike Pfeiffer's come across the line, not improving on their final lap on the slick tyres. Ash Hill goes up to P6, just 3 thousandths in front of Peter Stather, and Ben Brown with a late lap in goes up to P3, just a tenth and a half off the top times. Ben Holmes coming through Lovefield, the final corner now, will not get to the line in time and will not complete this final flying lap. The checkered flag is out. That is the session. That is our starting grid for the first race, which is our 35-minute feature race.
Indeed it is. Well, with all the track dry out, it does look like it's dried out a little bit as we jump to the race session. We'll go through the grid in the first instance. Oliver Stone on pole, followed by Luca Munro, Ben Brown, Nigel Stock. Your front two rows, Ben Holmes in 5th, Ash Hill 6th, Staver 7th, Trower 8th, Pfeiffer's 9th, Dan Tomlinson in 10th, Mason 11th, Sophie Arrowan in 12th, Ashford 13th, Page 14th, Burton for Terry 15th, Richard 16th, Perry 17th, and Morgan down in 18th position. With all 18 drivers are about to now take to the grid. We'll just wait for everyone to grid up. We'll shortly go for what is a very short... actually, it is a standing start, should I say. I'm used to having rolling starts with all the stuff we've been doing at minute on oNiD. But it is a standing start for these guys. And, oh God, please take it easy into turn 1. Old turn 1, it's the old start-finish straight that we'll be using, so it'll be a bit of a flat-out right-hander in a good situation, in good conditions. These are far from good conditions. The track is still damp. There is still a little bit of moisture on circuit. Everyone going to the grid with dry tyres, apart from Adrian Rich down in 16th.
Yeah, the track looks even drier than it was in qualifying, so I don't think that is the right play. Over 35 minutes, those wet tires must find themselves disintegrated by the end. I imagine they will probably make a pit stop even to switch over. All of the cars are on the grid and are about to set foot towards T1. They don't know exactly how much grip this Silverstone circuit is going to offer them, but they put the power down through the circuit and head themselves towards T1. Still a bit of spray we can see into T1. Luca Munro on the inside of Oliver Stone. They're still side by side on the exit as they come towards Maggots. Everyone sorting themselves out, have managed to avoid each other, keeping it clean, but now into Maggots. Can they do so again? Oliver Stone running the outside around Luca Munro, leaving them good space. Munro getting in front and with the inside does take the lead, but instantly into the slipstream for Oliver Stone. They're gaining. Will they go? It's to the outside for them. They're trying to find big grip. What will be off the racing line when they get towards apex, but Munro fighting this by and just sort of shuffles Oliver Stone wide towards the grass. Stone trying to come back on, will do so just in front of Peter Stather and Ash Hill, who are still fighting side by side over P3. Stather getting the run off of the field will take P3, and in the slipstream of Oliver Stone, maybe got a challenge for P2 across our finish line here towards T1 again. Still very short lap indeed, following right under that rear wing. Gotta be careful of the dirtier air, as Jessica Perry has had some difficulties, as well as Charlie Morgan. Ben Holmes has come into the pit lane as well, and we've got a car facing the wrong way. I think that is Jessica Perry, as nearly coming together there in the fight for P2.
Speaking of Jessica Perry, restart lap 1 incident involved with Richard Ashford potentially as well. They go down into the cut through circuit, they slow right down and just stop on circuit. What in the world happened there?
I wonder if they've got some technical issue of sorts, because that is certainly very odd. They weren't on the circuit when we came by for lap 2, so they have moved the car off the track. But yeah, unfortunately, does seem to be a bit of a technical issue there. Hopefully, it isn't too major. Ashford, nearly getting into the rear of the car in front of them, goes for a little spin.
He's able to
And
save it.
yeah, but has dropped them towards the back of the grid. As we see, Adrian Rich already dropping down, is about 3 seconds off of the next car in front of them, Ben Brown, and the pace isn't looking good. 1 minute 1 last lap. So yeah, struggling with pace as thanks Sophie, Aaron Wynn and Yuri Shore have had it coming together into Maggott's corner, and they're going to come back onto the track still nearly side by side. Sophie, actually that's Jarrett Page just behind Sophie, as Peter Stather now has had issues and is dropping down the order.
Yes, indeed. Oh, and there's Burton for Terry's round. What in the world happened there? We're going to get an answer, actually. Let's jump to a replay. Into Brooklands. Oh, a twitch on the rear end. The track is still wet. Oh, floors the throttle and goes pirouetting. Swan Lake would be impressed.
I don't even know if they floored the throttle there. Maybe, you know, a little push on the throttle on that wet grass could be enough to spin these cars round. And they're taking to pit lane. Reminder, all of the drivers have a quick repair, so if they do have damage that they need to repair, it won't be a long stop in pit lane. It should be almost instantaneously.
Yeah.
As we see a replay here of Charlie Morgan just losing the rear end, trying to put any power down through Luffield corner. And yeah, find themselves in the gravel. Lucky not getting beached here, as we see for Toy now heading through pit lane, and will just about stay on the lead lap as we go back to our lead fight. Oliver Stone closing up to Luca Munro, setting the fastest lap of the race.
Indeed, sorry, just caught the last end of Lewis Mason having a bit of a spin. I think that was him battling with another car. I can't see what number that is, but sideways to 41. It's
Dafter, I think,
yeah,
going up the inside, and just clipped the curb, and the car instantly went for a spin. Shows you how dangerous the curbs are, how quickly they will just spin the car round if you breathe on them just a little too heavily. As we cut back to the fight for the lead, Oliver Stone in the slipstream again, looking to the outside of Brooklands here, not sending in as much. Luca Munro, though, certainly sending it in, losing the rear end just by holds on to the car and holding on to the lead in the process. A little further back, Mike Pfeiffer, who's maybe making issue, has lost a place to Dan Thompson. But Oliver Stone, with a good exit from left field, gets to the inside of Luca Munro and has retaken the lead as they head to Cops for the 6th time this race.
Indeed it is. That's a fun battle for lead cars as it stands, and the interval's only about 0.1516 of a second. Nose to tail, and that was almost a bit of a love tap to rear number 6 car. Oliver Stone able to keep it pointing in the right direction. Lewis Mason's dropping down the order again, sadly. He's had another spin. He has indeed in the final turn. Is able to rejoin, but these tricky conditions. The dry tyres are quickest right now, but only if you can stick on the dry line.
Which is going to make it quite difficult to pass, though it isn't impossible, as we've just seen. Nigel Stock in the brown livery was running very strong in the first half of qualifying, but wasn't able to improve their lap time along with everyone else at the end of the session. Currently running P6. Also noticed Ben Brown down in P8. He popped himself up to P3 in the grid, so he's had a bit of an issue somewhere and dropped down the order. So he's going to be having a bit of a recovery drive. But you can see Nigel Stock closing in on Mike Pfeiffer, who's made up 4 places so far this race, starting 9th on the grid, but nearly into the back of Pfeiffer's goes Nigel Stock. Just by gets the car through Maggots into the Wellington Straight, but has dropped back a little bit because of that. And for Toy, getting past Lewis Mason for 15th in both of their recovery drives, with both of them having had trip through pit lane. Sophie Arnwin sliding across the grass towards the barrier. I think just about got stopped before hitting the barrier, if they did hit it very lightly. And that's a very odd place to have crashed. This is into T1, but not through T1, before T1, but well beyond the exit. That nearly looked like a big collision. Just let themselves run wide onto that curb, and they were very much reminded of why you shouldn't touch the curbs around here on a damp Silverstone day.
Oh, she's back around again. So that 714 car is struggling, the United Sim team. Oh, that's going to be a tricky race for them. They're being lapped now by the leaders who, again, short nature of the circuit, is now just being lapped by Mike Pfeiffer's.
Now a lap down, having their struggles, but it's still a good learning experience to learn these wet conditions, which it seems like they might need, showing that an experience of just running on the curb, even on this 3 woodcut here that leads on to start-finish straight for the national circuit. Just, you know, running too much of the curb, a very sort of a mistake that you'd imagine would only an inexperienced driver would make, as Richard Ashford has got themselves in front of Adrian Rich, who is still running at that wet tyre. Maybe Adrian thinks a bit of rain is coming later on in the race. Big slide there for Oliver Stone, just as we cut away to the replay here of Ashford. That was an easy move on the straight. Looks like Adrian Rich knows that they're not on the right tyre and isn't fighting too hard as Luca Monroe is trying to replicate what Oliver Stone did a few laps ago to take the lead. Is trying to play back on them, though doesn't look like not good enough of an exit out of left field. Maybe with the slipstream towards T1 an opportunity might come about. I'll be closing towards Cop's corner, but very short braking zone, if any. Certainly not in the dry conditions. These damp conditions might necessitate a bit of a break, but wide onto the curb for Oliver Stone, and they might find the barrier. I think they just got away with that, but trying to push the limits, being put under pressure into T1, make a mistake. See, just gone to the curb, slides out that AstroTurf, just slides you towards the barrier. Luckily, yeah, a bit of tarmac before the wall allowed Oliver Stone to gather the car back up, get it back onto track, and they'll continue on in P2. A few car lengths to close down back to Luca Monroe, who retakes the lead. Yeah, I wonder if that's just got Oliver Stone a little bit nervous, as we're 9.5 minutes into our first race here.
He's very, very lucky boy, wasn't he? That piece of concrete or tarmac on the exit after the kitty litter probably saved him from going into the barriers. Able to collect it, kind of licked their wounds a little bit, ran wide onto the outside cab. Takes well to avoid it this time round. And indeed will continue. Ashford has lost a position to Charlie Morgan, who I think is... Oh, what's happened to Dan Thomas? Dropped a couple of positions. He's gone wide a little bit. Sorry, just trying to keep an eye on the timing towers. People are dropping up and down the order like a yo-yo. What happened to Dan Tomlinson? Jesus.
Yeah, I mean, it's very easy to make a mistake in these conditions as you're pushing, trying to find the limit. So easy to overstep it.
Oh, that's what happens.
Yeah, spin out of T1. I imagine very similar to Oliver Stone, but instead of sort of catching the car and stopping it from spinning, had to go for a full 360. Nigel Stock losing a couple of positions just as we come out of the replay, as Peter Stather's gone in front of Dan Tomlinson, and gravel being kicked up there. That is Nigel Stock in the gravel at Lovefield Corner. They're down to P7 now. Maybe you can catch what that mistake is or maybe we'll look at that a little bit later, as Oliver Stone has caught up to the back of Luca Monroe, set a new fastest lap of the race doing so, and is going to have the slipstream here as they come on to the Wellington Straight. No DRS in these cars, despite the DRS sign that leads onto this straight, but you can see he's closing in, defensive look for Monroe, just trying to cover off the inside, still going in a little bit deeper to Brooklands than Oliver Stone is. Just trying to run a slightly different line. Is Stone getting a little bit of cleaner onto their wing, trying to get a better exit, much like they did to initially take the lead after they lost it from the start. But defending the inside again is Luca Monroe towards Cops. They're feeling the pressure, and Oliver Stone has got themselves to the outside, not able to hang it the long way round there, probably on the slightly damper part of the circuit off the racing line through T1. As we see Adrian Rich spun off at T1 with those wet tyres, which must be struggling at this stage of the race. With how much the track is drying up, they must be at least somewhat overheated, and will certainly be overheated and damaged to at least some extent, or quite a bit, after that spin into T1. Just turning in from having two wheels on the curb is immediately gonna spin the car without second thought. So we cut back to this lead. Silverstone still heavily applying the pressure. Maybe has a good exit, is trying to get to the inside of Woodcott, but Luca Monroe slams the door shut, and again just holding that inside line, forcing Silverstone to the outside. They're not putting any wheels onto the white line or curbing. They're entering Cop's corner.
No,
we can see Monroe just with the inside line. They're able to carry that little bit more speed and hold themselves in the lead for now.
Indeed, spray is still present now. It's drying out. You can see on circuit, parts of the circuit do have a very significant dry line now, so it's able to put those 6 hours to use. But yeah, Silverstone now just dropping a little bit, coming back into about 0.8 of a second behind the lead. As we have had a couple of instances. Dan Tomlinson's had a spin again. See what's happened. Goes down into the old complex as it is. Gets just a bit of a curve.
Yeah.
Oh!
There's Peter Stather. Probably did a very similar thing beforehand, and luckily Dan Tomlinson was just far enough back that Peter could at least not be in the line of fire directly. But yeah, looked like though Peter Stather was actually losing the rear end much earlier in the corner, as we do see Dan Tomlinson slide in there.
Just slide into his DMs, why not?
But Peter Stather just sort of losing the rear end, having the car slide out to the outside, probably just on the damper part of the track. And yeah, that was that. This Mason into the pit lane for the second time this race has not been a good run for them, and maybe they've had some issues.
I think so, sadly. There's a jump back to pit. Even though he's in his pit box, he's manually jumped back to the pits itself.
Towed back to pit lane.
A very quick tow, because he's already there. But yes, a tow back to the pit lane, or his pit box at the very least. Will go down the order a little bit. Peter Stather, after his little excursion going out the final turn, is managing to get back past Mike Piffers for P4. And just behind them is a battle, I believe. It's a lap down, but it's Tomlinson on the back of Ben Brown. Indeed it is. 22 versus 77. Both oNiD drivers here racing with us tonight. It's good to see some of the oNiD team racing in these leagues, but yeah, that will be a very interesting conversation when they still do start fighting. I'm sure they'll be in the oNiD esports team Discord fighting it out to try and figure out who was going to get past who, but yeah, they're going to be I think a bit eagle-eyed of each other. Let's not have a inter-team clash like certain McLaren drivers did just this weekend just gone.
Yeah, very similar lap times between those two drivers. Is Stather another issue at Brooklands, as Silverstone has taken the lead of the race again from Luca Monroe into T1.
Yes, indeed. We'll get a replay of that take for the lead in a moment and see what Peter's done. He goes into the corner again. I think it's going to be a similar issue to what he's done before. Oh no, way before the last time he did it. It was on the exit, but maybe just a bit too much right foot.
Said again, he lost the rear end early into the corner last time, but he's just able to hold it until he got to the curb. This time, the rear end, when it did step out, it was just gone immediately. Those rear tires are probably suffering from those two spins, and this is Silverstone. Did get to the inside of Cop's corner this time and will take the lead. Luca Monroe might be a little annoyed at themselves that they didn't defend the inside quite as aggressively that time. Let Stone have the inside, as it certainly seems to be the line to have into the treacherous T1 of Cops. Cut back to Troy Shore and Jar Page fighting over P11 now, just outside the top 10.
Needed. Let's be mighty close going into that cut through, but down on to the Wellington Straight, if I remember correctly.
Wellington Straight.
The Wellington Straight. It looks like the gap is open just enough for Jory not to worry about it too much. stays put and keeps it on, or goes a little bit on the inside curb there, picking up a bit of dampness from the circuit. You can still see there's puddles on the inside of the curb, but goes wide. That's going to give Travis a reason to go past, and that's move done.
Not just wide onto the curb, but dipping a couple of wheels into the gravel as well. Really going to hinder acceleration. As you can see, not just behind Jar Page, but a good second back as they get into T1. Oliver Stone wasting no time, having taken the lead, saying a new fastest lap, as Nigel Stock has taken another adventure off at Lovefield Corner here. I wonder if they've done a similar thing. What? Curb, yeah.
Yeah.
Same as Dan Tomlinson a few laps ago. And yeah, we'll get going again, but the difficulty for these drivers is tyres, assuming this trait has followed through from the old tyres that Ben was telling us about at Snetterton. The real difficulty is when you have a slide on them, you put a lot of wear into them, and that's really what damages your race and slows you down. We look at a couple of the drivers that haven't just had one spin, but 2 or 3, putting the tyres through those spins, sliding them across the track, overheating them potentially, not doing those tyres any good, will be quite a struggle, as Peter Stather, I think, has got back past Mike Pfeiffer's for the second time, hopefully to stay there for the rest of the race and not make another mistake so quickly.
Absolutely. We'll see how he did that, actually. So we'll go on to replay up the inside. Oh, very nice move. Finding the grip on the inside. 113 goes wide of Mike Pfeiffer's as Stafer gets that position back, and hopefully you can hold it this time and avoid any sort of incident. As we said, the track is still damp in places. They are catching out drivers. You can still see a little bit of spray being kicked up by the cars, even on these slick, dry tyres. And it looks like Dan's got a run on Ben Brown 4 to move up into 6th. Can he do it? Things are putting those on the inside. Ben gets in space. They're side by side, almost going onto the curb on the inside. That could have been disastrous for Tomlinson if it's still damp on there. But yields the position. We'll have to try again at another point.
That was very brave from Dan to put the nose to the inside so late into the corner. We also have Pfeiffer's trying to fight back on Peter Stather and has got themselves back in front through T1. I think got the inside towards Cop's corner. And as we've seen a couple of times, that's been the line. Ben Brown, out wide on the exit of T1 and has done exactly what Oliver Stone did maybe about 10 minutes ago now. Getting onto the curb, having the curb drag them wide through the corner. And yeah, exactly. It's carbon copy, except a little more lawn mowing than what Oliver Stone did. They were able to get off the grass a little bit quicker. But yeah, that has dropped Ben behind Dan Tomlinson. And has gone to the curb on the exit of Brickland, and a spin into the field. It's going to drop them behind Nigel Stock, who did the exact same thing a couple of laps ago.
He did indeed. Cutting the grass on multiple occasions is Ben, and if he wants a job cutting lawnmowers, he needs to go to apply to Bottas's lawn mowing company in Red Bull Ring. And that's an old reference, you get that, well done. Not many people would, as Peter Stather is again now closing back up on Pfeiffer's again for position up the inside. Back onto the Wellington straight, and that again is move done. Pfeiffer's looking to get back because it's going to be alongside Peter diving into the wet line there, getting a bit of a slower run. I wonder if that was him going offline because he may have had a slowdown penalty made for cutting a corner. Either way, that looked like a very easy move. Oh, that was close. That almost looked like they were going to go back into the back of each other there. Thankfully not, and they do continue. We're just going to go back up to lead battle because this is heating up once more. This is going to be Monroy. Look out the inside! That's not much space there. They give each other just enough space. I'm just freaking out for a little moment because he went onto the curb. You saw the standing water on that inside curb being kicked up by the cars. And you're thinking, oh please, for the love of God, don't spin to each other. They're still going to fight into left field, side by side. 56 on the outside. He can't hold it there. Surely not. No, it stays. Tucks back in behind, thinking, you know what, in the dry, I'll probably maybe I'll be able to run it around the outside and get the inside line for this final turn. Not right now. Thinks about just staying put, evaluating his options and trying to go again. And that's a very random inside line there for Oliver Stone, taking up all the curb he possibly can, going on to the national pit straight. And now he's got back markers ahead of him. That is Richard Ashford ahead of him. I'm sure will move out the way in a few moments' time.
Pfeiffer's and Staff there have been fighting some more, and Pfeiffer's I think has made a mistake at the end of the previous lap, dropping a second back and actually coming into the clutches of Dan Tomlinson, who might be looking for a move soon. Let's just try and see this down the inside goes Pfeiffer's, and it's just a little too deep, slides out wide, gets probably gone to the curb a little bit, lucky not to spin. Let's say from on board with Pfeiffer's, just trying to send it in on the brakes on the inside, locked up the tyre a little bit there, and luckily there for Pfeiffer's, he ran wide enough that he got off the curb, off the AstroTurf, onto the tarmac runoff, and then used that to straight line over the curb and AstroTurf to not spin, get themselves back onto the track just before Dan Tomlinson could get through for P5.
What's happened to Oliver? 5.5 seconds down now. I think we're about to have an answer.
Minute and 2 second lap time. I don't think he even touched the curb there. He was just wide enough. There must be a damp patch on the edge of that curb, and we can see the puddle on the inside of the field that's still there. But that was such fine margins.
Just there on exit, a puff of white water, almost like a puff of white smoke. That's water. He just dipped his rear tyre into the water, and that just sent the rear around. Oh dear.
I mean, usually you're all right if you can just avoid the white lines and the curbs in these conditions, but which I thought Oliver Stone's done should be all right, but no, the water just creeping off of it and giving him a bad day. As we see Dan Tomlinson gets onto the curb through maggots, and it's a slide off onto the gravel, something he did in the practice session before we went on our for qualifying. And he should have remembered from that practice session, don't do that. But I think with the car alongside him, he wanted to make sure he left enough space and accidentally ran himself onto the curb. He'll be a bit annoyed himself with that. He's allowed Ben Brown back through as well as Nigel Stock, and has fallen to P8. Wonder if he can catch back up, but you can see that mistake, 10 seconds lost.
Yep, absolutely. As a car in the background having a bit of a big slide. That is, I think, Sophie Erwin it was. Just having a moment. I think their front wing is a bit bent. Looking at it on the left side, it is.
It was a bit bent earlier. Not sure if that's from the wall contact they had towards Cops, or if that was another moment. But they've since then had another spin through T1 360. Luckily pointing the right way, and we'll get going again, but the tyres will not be best pleased with that. They will carry on in 14th in front of Adrian Rich, who's still on those wet tyres, still hanging it out as we get into the final 10 minutes of the race. But yeah, I don't think those wet tyres doing them any good as they're a lap down on Sophie. Dan Tomlinson, though, having made that mistake, is on a charge, fastest lap of the race as they try and catch back up to Ben Brown.
56.03, that is a good 10th quicker than what the leaders do. I'm not sure if that's just a one-off, but managing to put in a very decent lap there. Good shout for him. But yes, you said about Rich, and he's actually coming to the pit lane. So I do wonder if this is going to be a pit stop for dry tyres. And Oliver Stone responds, 56.03 new fastest lap for Ollie's. Oh, hold on a minute. Ollie's had another spin, and it looks like Rich is going back out on wet. So I think he's going. It might have been actually a drive through the track limits. However, Oliver Stone has dropped second position to Ash Hill.
Another mistake from our pole sitter, just again running wide through T1, getting onto the curb, and instead of it dragging him wide into the runoff, this time it's span him round, just like what we've seen with Sophie, though he wasn't as lucky as Sophie was in terms of sort of being able to get back going again. Has now fallen 1.5 seconds behind Ash Hill, who's taken second place from that. Just over 8 minutes left in the race. Can Oliver Stone catch up to Ash Hill, retake P2, because after 2 mistakes now, that looks like the best that they're going to be able to do, as long as they don't make another mistake running slightly wide onto a wet part of the track and having it spin them around.
Yeah, absolutely. So that's going to hurt them. I'm sure they'll be kicking themselves, especially with fighting that lead battle. They obviously do have pace to stick with the top three, and they are closing in on Ash Hill very gradually. But with only 8 or 7 minutes left in the race, can he get back up to Luca Monroe? I'm not sure if he can.
10 seconds is a lot of, or 11 seconds even for Silverstone is a lot of time to gain in only 7.5 minutes. So we probably have, what, 8 laps remaining? And he's also got to get through Ash Hill in that same time frame, who is still running quickly, but he's on a charge to try and catch Ash Hill. Gained 4/10 that lap with the fastest lap for the race, but you can see Ash Hill still is determined to hold on to the P2 that they've been gifted so far with a personal best lap for themselves. Does have a little bit of traffic up in front, might actually give them a bit of slipstream down the Wellington Straight here, which could help them just try and hold on to any gap they have over Silverstone at this point. But trying to make out who that is in front of Ash Hill. They don't seem to be too generous at this stage.
I can tell you, I will tell you in a minute, I believe car 36 is Jerry Screwer. I think they're going to allow the move to be done. Maybe not. Ollie Stone, another personal best, another overall, like, fastest lap of the race, I say. First man into the 55s. It's a 55.84.
Yeah, you're right. Let's Ash Hill make the move into Maggots. Doesn't let Silverstone follow through just yet. Hopefully with the slipstream, Silverstone is going to make the move to the inside. But you can see Oliver has caught up quite a bit on Ash Hill, with them being stuck behind Joré here into the braking zone. Don't run it into deep, Oliver. Don't get onto that damp patch. They left a margin there to the curb to not repeat that same mistake. But yeah, both of these drivers are pushing, and even with being stuck behind the Joré there for a lap or so, Ash Hill still closed in a little bit on Luca Monroe. Luca maybe just taking a little bit safe now with the margin they have. Ash Hill saying another personal best, but they're going to need to defend if they want to hold on to this P2, as Silverstone is pushing hard. As we've been watching this battle for second place, Ben Brown has had multiple issues and has dropped back down to P8, is still trying to get himself recovered. Gone to the curb in the braking for Bricklands. Funny enough, the car didn't have the grip, not able to slow down. Took a good trip across the gravel there. I can see Ben just trying to put any power down in that runoff, the rear wheel spinning, and him having to get back off the throttle, correct the slide with the steering wheel. You could see the hands coming up out of the cockpit, and then had to take a drive through for incident points. Very unfortunate there for Ben.
Yeah, absolutely. He has come through the pits and will take that. I believe. Oh, Ollie Stone. Ash Hill's going to the pits.
We've seen a number of drivers running out a little bit wide, and every time you do run out a little bit wide, you'll get an instant point, and then if you've just had a little bit of contact with someone, that can be 4 instant points. And as we see,
that's why.
Yeah, that will have done it. The lapped car in front of them, that is...
There's Ashford, number 7.
Yes, still on those wet tires, remember, just, you know, it shows you that it's too dry for the wet tires, or it's actually changed to slick tires now.
Yeah,
sorry, Ashford was never on the wet tires, my apologies, that's Adrian Rich. But yeah, Ashford just sliding out wide, and Ash Hill not really anywhere to go. Unfortunately, has dropped them out of P2 all the way down to P7. Ben Brown still in the pit lane, now down to 13th place. They've been stopped there for a little while. I wonder what's going on there.
I do wonder as well. Maybe damage we didn't see. Did have an off, and I'm not sure if he got caught up in another incident. I can't see anything on my screens, but he's in the pits. He's been there for a little while now, sadly. So he'll rejoin, going to be a couple laps down, and baton for Terry as well, coming into the pits.
Again, we've seen how many drivers who've just slid a little bit wide, picked up an off track. I believe it's 17 incident points will force you to take a trip through this pit lane, which is quite long here at Silverstone. Of course, this pit lane, it is now the national pits, but did used to be the pit lane that Formula One used back in the day, back before the wing was built at the other end of the circuit. So it's a sizable pit lane. Does take a bit of time to head down, and has dropped for Toy back to P12.
Can't see how many instant points they've had for these guys drive through. So I'm presuming it was just a drive through, and indeed it was though. But the graphics on the screen are showing only about 4 or 5 instant points for these guys. I'm not sure if that's entirely correct, but yeah, definitely taking drive-throughs, obviously for potentially going off track or in track cuts or having issues of their own. Ben Brown's in the pits, however, with 2 minutes to go. It's going to be well down the order, especially for the next race as well.
Well, next race is going to be a top 15 reverse grid. So unfortunately, 3 drivers will be missing out. That looks like it'll be Adrian Rich. Well, maybe not Adrian Rich. If he keeps going here, he might get himself in front of Ben Brown. I think, yeah, completes one more lap, will be in front of Ben here. So we'll knock Ben Brown out of the current pole position for the next race. But Ben Holmes and Lewis Mason, who have been sat in the pits a little while themselves, will be missing out on the reverse grid. And Luca Munro will be reversed down to that 15th place. We'll have a lot of work to do, but we don't know the exact conditions. They'll probably still be slightly damp for our second race, but certainly much drier than it was at the start of the race, let alone in the qualifying session we had not long ago.
Well, final lap here for Luca Monroe, leading the way. 11-second gap, has absolutely stormed away with it. Is able to just get that gap open over second place. Others fighting around him has probably kind of gifted him the ability to get that gap, but nonetheless it's going to be a very good finish here for him. As you see, a couple of drivers still going wide on turn 1. That's a massive car. That's a big off. That was
Adrian Rich.
Has he started the barrier?
Has hit the barrier very hard. The rear right suspension is completely broken. Ben Brown has left the pits, so Ben Brown will hold on to that pole position for next race. As you can see, the oNiD car in front also ran a little bit wide, but bang, heavy with that rear right tyre. The front right going into the wall as well, losing the rear wing.
He needs to return to pits. His suspension right rear is absolutely shot. It's a checkered flag, however, Luca Monroe. He's going to come to the final turn. Ben Brown's returned. Oh no, Ben Brown's out. Sorry, it's Ben Holmes in the pits. I stand corrected. But it'll be Luca Monroe who takes a win for the first race this evening. It will be P15 who will start on the grid for race 2 this evening, our final race of the evening. But a very good win. Ashford for Terry Robinson. All see the checkered flag. Oh, Steifer's spun. He's dropped a position right on the last lap.
At the penultimate corner 3-2 at Luffield. Let's get a replay of this. Through Bricklands. Doesn't run too wide. Doesn't hit the puddle there. Into Luffield. I think it's just tried to carry a little bit too much speed through the corner. And the rear tyres have had enough. Remember, I think Sather has had a couple of spins this race so far.
Yeah.
Let's say so far throughout the race. So those rear tyres won't have been in the best condition. And it has caught him out there one last time. Drops him off of the podium for our feature race today, as Charlie Morgan, last car to cross the line, will finish in P18.
They will, and that...
P8, sorry, not 18.
P8, indeed, and we'll immediately go to the next grid. We don't have time to see the results, but we will hopefully be able to pull up the grid if it lets us. No, it won't let us, sadly. So we can't see the grid, but we can tell you it's Ben Brown on pole position from Terry Stock, Arrowinson, Arrowan, should I say, not Arrowinson, Arrowan, Sophie Arrowan, Holmes, Hill, Mason, Morgan, Stafer, your top 10. Oh, is it going to let me show the grid? Potentially not. That's very unofficial. As Heat 1 results. So this is the results from the last race. Monroe, Stone, Piper's, Stock, Tomlinson, Hill Morgan, Staver, Scowen, Page, and Ashford for Terry, Aaron Perry, Brown, Rich, Mason, Holmes. And that is going to be creation results from that first race. I did actually show it, which is quite nice. I've got no bad to do that for next time, because it doesn't let me do it in the normal way. Anyway, we are waiting for the cars to go to the grid. It is dry, there is no rain. The track, however, still looks a little bit damp. And some drivers actually going to the grid, very interestingly, on wet tyres. I'm sure that's an error, but Staver and Adrian Rich has gone back to take off those wet tyres, but Staver's gone to the grid on wet tyres. I'm not sure he realises that. He doesn't need them. The track looks to be relatively dry, and we'll see the weather. 93% chance of rain, yes, but it's just partially cloudy. Track looks dry.
Do we have a short warm-up session here between the two races?
You know what? You're right. We do have a quick warm-up. Cars will go to the grid, we'll have a bit of fun. Just so they get used to what's going on here on the circuit. Now, you know what? Can we drag anyone down? Do we have anyone we can drag down? Just to have a quick natter to. I don't think we can. Oh, we might be able to, as there is a Dan Tomlinson up there in the voice channel. Should try and drag him down. Let's see if we can. Ugh, I can't get him. Oh, yes I can. We're going to speak to one of our drivers in a brief moment. Let's have a look and drag down Dan Tomlinson. Dan, you're in the comments booth. No naughty words, please. Sorry for dragging you down last minute, but good evening.
Yeah, yeah.
How are
Just
we?
ignore a couple of spins which I had.
Was it that bad for you?
Yeah, the track was drying up like as the session went on, and you just get to that point where it's like, oh, the track's dry now, and you get to that little bit of track, or like you hit a little bit of curb that still has a bit of water on it, and then that's it, the car's gone.
Oh, mate.
I mean,
that
the
sucks.
result was good. For having qualified 10th on the grid, you finished P5. That's a good result, even if it was a difficult race.
Yeah, it wasn't too bad. I'll try my best working my way back up again after each one, trying to get as much slipstream as I can.
No, that's absolutely fair. I mean, you're going to be starting. Where are we starting on reverse grid? Where did you finish?
11th on the grid.
You'll start third, which will be fun for you.
No, 11th on the grid.
Oh,
Aiden.
11th on the grid. Okay, sorry. You'll be 11th on the grid for this race, which meant you finished 4th, 5th.
Finished 5th.
Finished 5th. There we go. I can. Don't worry, math. I can math. Just about. But a bit of a fight.
Pretty much in the same place roughly I started the first race in.
Yeah, just one position further back. You'll have some other quick drivers around you trying to make your way through the grid. Do you think it'll be an easy race to make up positions, or do you think it might be difficult, especially if there's still some damp patches lingering around on the track?
Looking at the weather, I don't think there's forecast like any more rain, so if it stays like this, it should be a fairly dry second race by the looks of it. So it should make for some good racing, hopefully.
Just hope you don't find a curb that has a puddle still lingering from the first race.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, it looks dry.
Hopefully I don't get a scare off the line as well in the second race. The first race, I think Yuri missed the start and then he went into the back of it. Quickly got out of the way.
Oh dear. Well, I sure hope we see you back up there fighting once more, and maybe having less spins than you did this time out. The track conditions definitely difficult. But we'll let you get back to things, and things the cars are just gridding up, so we'll chuck you back up to the voice channel. Thank you so much. You are a unwilling participant now, I'm sure, but
thank you for joining us, even if you had no say in the matter.
Yes.
Yeah. No worries.
Have a good second race.
Oh, that was hilarious. That was brilliant. I absolutely loved that.
And Ben Bryan saying in chat, don't talk about white lines.
Don't talk about white lines. Got it.
Well, they're
Maybe.
very important in these conditions. You've got to not touch them.
Indeed. And
As much as you may want to, don't.
Yeah.
Let's have a little run through of the grid here for our sprint race. 25 minutes coming up.
Indeed. Ben Brown, Perry, Arrowen for Terry, Ashford Page, Skora, Staver, Morgan Hill, Tomlinson, Stock, your top 12. And we've got Peppers, Stone, Monroe, Rich, Mason and Holmes for the back end of that grid as we are about to go racing. And we will see Ben Brown is on pole. Perry's been alongside them. Who's it going to be going into turn one? Who's going to take or hold the lead on a very dry track? Lights out, away we go. A bit of tyre smoke for them getting away, but reasonably getting away well from everyone else. The background, never mind, there's contact in the background. Let's look at Monroe around. Our race winner from last time out. Facing the wrong way, making contact with Mason and Ben Holmes potentially. That is a race start he did not want.
Rory Shore had another bad start again that Dan Tomlin was sent ahead in the first race. As wide goes Perry into Maggots, getting a big twitch, holds on to the car but has lost out to Sophie Irwin and will be under pressure from Fortoy as they slip into the slipstream. Dan Tomlinson has a bit of a difficult start, dropping a place, but yeah, very unfortunate for Luca Monroe as they got collected up side by side between Stather and Fortoy into T1, and Stather now fighting round the outside into the field. Is a little too wide though for them. It might give them a good exit. They carry the momentum and up to P3 for Stather onto the podium. Fortoy in the background to go try and pick up slipstream, try and follow them through as Rory Shore is into the pits at the end of this opening lap. Ben Brown leads the way as we start the second lap. Wide again for Jessica Perry over the curb and wide for Stather. They have to go the long way around the curb. And luckily they don't lose a place from that. They still hold in P3 as we head into Maggots down the inside. Charlie Morgan being forced a little bit wide there by the 113 car. Oliver Stone and Ash Hill are going to try and follow through, but Morgan is going to have a chance to fight back into Brooklands. Oliver Stone looking to the inside of Mike Pfeiffer's. He was the car that originally got to the inside of Charlie Morgan. Ash Hill trying to follow through. Will have to go the long way round if they can. But Pfeiffer's caught up behind Oliver Stone, who's caught up themselves behind Ashford in front. Might get alongside here, but doesn't seem to have a good of a run as I thought they would. Onto the curb goes Ashford. Car full. We've seen how poorly that ended for Sophie last race. Who still holds on to P2 as we start third lap here, nearly 2 by 2. Couple of cars in front running wide, including Ben Brown, sorry, not Ben Brown, but Fortoy and Perry running wide there. Is look at this cluster as they head into Maggots.
They're giving each other space, that's the thing. They're able to race each other and are actually racing relatively well as Ashford's dropping down the order. I don't think that's just because of his head spin, maybe just because he's fighting. I am going to take a brief moment just to see what happened to Luca Monroe. We'll go to the race start. This is one of our bigger incidents as the race went underway. He gets away well. Oh, he's just collected. He's just a passenger.
I think that one's on Ben Holmes. He didn't get the greatest start. You could see Ben Holmes' much better start was just pulling across, and the car he was coming across was thinking about turning right because to try and go round Monroe, but kept it straight. Holmes kept coming across though, and caused that contact. I think he'll be quite regretful when he looks back at that at the end of the race. Sophie loses place to Stather, falls to P3, but still on the podium as Nigel Stock falls into strife. Pfeiffer's per exit out of T1 drops back a few places to P6, and Ash Hill is going to be trying to get past him, but look at this pack, still very close together. They'll be picking up the slipstream down the straight here, down the Wellington Straight towards Brooklands. Will we see any moves? Morgan, the closest driver to the car in front, which is Dan Tomlinson. Not close enough for an overtake just yet, but they're closing in through this section towards the end of the track. Lewis Mason having a spin through Brooklands and has quite a bit of damage there. You can see the rear wing very much not straight.
I'd like to see how that happens. As a tap from behind goes wide. No tap from behind. Maybe just a bit of previous damage for another incident, but that was all on him. He's gonna be rejoining the circuit and getting back underway, but some time to be found. Staver dropping some positions, actually getting up nearer to the front of the pack. So Staver's dropped positions here. He was in third. It's dropped down to fifth. I do wonder what's happened there. Lewis Mason's had another off. We'll see what's happened with him. Going through turn one. And, oh, round she goes.
Yeah, I think there's rear end damage there for the Mason.
Yeah, I think so.
That is just, we've seen how difficult the rear end can be on these cars when they're undamaged. So to have some damage are just making it extremely difficult, if not impossible, to control that car for them. But you see, side by side between two oNiD cars here, Dan Tomlinson, Charlie Morgan. Tomlinson on the insides ahead towards one, and looks like Morgan's just going to back out of that one. Let Dan Tomlinson take the racing line in, and both of them get onto the curb, and it's a spin for Dan Tomlinson. Gets pointing the right way and going again, but it's going to lose a heap of positions as they fall down to 13th.
Oh, he's not going to be happy with that, and yeah, we'll just jump on board. He's going to be lucky. It didn't actually ping as a crash, so we can't quite get a replay of that, sadly. But we did catch it live, we saw it well enough. We're just going to go to Berton for Terry, who's had a separate incident just up ahead of these guys. And we saw Tomlinson having a spin. He's gone into the corner. Is there contact with the American car? Oh, it might have been just a little bit of a nudge on that front rear wing. That's sent for Terry round.
Yep, you'd see the front wing end plate getting into the tyre. As for Toy, a bit wider, opened the door. But they weren't quite able to keep it tight. Like this battle, something might happen here as they all head towards T1. Everyone trying to find a bit of space. Who has the confidence through T1? Don't run too wide, don't run on that curb. A few drivers do. Luckily, all of them still facing the right way. Unlike Dan Tomlinson was a lap or two ago into Maggots. Jessica Perry trying to get to the inside of Ashford is just left enough space and does hold it tight to the inside. To not cause any contact home, so has a good run here out of Maggots down the straight. Is going to be on the inside as they get to Brooklands. Will send it in. Does Perry try and hang it the long way round? But they kind of have no choice as they're gonna, as Dan Tomlinson is going to try and follow Ben Holmes through. It'll be the outside for Luffield. Can't quite get it to work a little further up. Oliver Stone sets new fastest lap for the race. They're up to P3, chasing down Sophie Aaron for P2. 2.8 seconds between Ben Brown and Sophie at the front of the field as Jessica Perry runs really deep into T1. Long way round the runoff, and so does... Who was that in the background? That's for Toy, getting all the way out to the gravel, despite pointing the right way, not having a spin. That's going to drop them off the pack in front of them. As into... Brooklands, Oliver Stone on the outside line, but a bit more confident on the brakes, hangs it round the outside and gets a move done for P2 on Sophie.
Yep, absolutely. Jarrett Page. Oh, that's Jarrett Page off the circuit. Having to slam on the brakes to stop the car from spinning. He does get the car stopped. How did that happen? Let's have a replay. We'll hopefully have an answer as we go into the corner. Almost 3 wide going into the turn. It just dips a couple of wheels on the right on the grass. That's all that was. Drags the car off the circuit and is able to bring it to a stop, but loses a couple of positions and maybe just loses a bit more confidence along with that as well.
Yep, and now also taking a trip through pit lane. I wonder if they've got some damage that is difficult to tell because they are pulling over towards the pit boxes and they might be taking a quick repair. That
was very quick. That was in and out the pit box instantly. That's a quick repair if I've ever seen one. Oh, maybe not.
Issue for Sophie from P3, dropping down the order, is getting a going in on the exit of Luffield.
I'm about to find out how that happened. Curb. No curb. Turn in. Throttle. Bin. Yeah. Oh, Twitch always saves it, actually. You can see it was happening, and then just is able to snap the car around and save it being a bigger spin, but unfortunately unable to completely save the move, and will continue, albeit down in 7th position.
Yeah, it
Is
wasn't a good
mighty
spot
shame.
up in P3. So yeah, definitely a shame for her. But P7's still not a terrible spot. Let's see if she's able to hold on to that throughout the remaining 16, just under 16 minutes of the race remaining. Gap at the front, Ben Brown, 2.5 second advantage over Oliver Stone, but we've seen how quick Oliver Stone is. Remember, they took pole position for our feature race. They were 0.6 of a second quicker that last lap than Ben Brown. And quite a few drivers actually quicker than Ben that lap and are closing in. So it might be a case Ben might not be able to win this race, but might be able to hold on to a podium if he doesn't make any mistakes. Cut back to this battle, Adrian Rich closing on Ben Holmes and Dan Tomlinson, who is trying to get past for P8.
No, indeed, it is a bit of a cluster of cars here for what is 8th, 9th, 10th and 11th, and it's all been led by Ben Holmes as it stands, and Rich going wide pulls off race line and purposely lets through Monroe. Actually, to be fair, maybe recognised that Monroe was the race winner from last time out, realising it wasn't much of a battle to be had and just wants to do his own thing. That is absolutely fair. And I think Luca now is actually right on the tail of Dan Tomlinson for position.
And there can be an advantage here for Adrian Rich. You know, if they need to close back up to Monroe, stay as close as they can, as when Monroe passes Tomlinson and maybe Ben Holmes first as their two only cars run side by side, and that's allowed Luca Monroe to find the gap in the middle. And has he made it 2-for-1 heading down to Maggots? It's going to be the inside as they get to the right-hander of Ben Holmes, but Ben Holmes isn't going to give this up. He's going to fight this the long way round as they come on to the Wellington Straight. I think Adrian Rich was trying to take advantage as well, but find themselves going a little bit wide. That gives an opportunity to Richard Ashford, who is trying to go through for P11. They get themselves in front as they head towards Brooklyn's corner. On the outside for Luca Monroe, Ben Holmes trying to fight back on the inside. It'll be the long way round through Lovefield. Quite a bit of damage there to the front of Ben Holmes' car, and Luca Monroe has got moved on up to P8. Next car chased down, Sophie Aaronwin.
Indeed, Ben's not giving up. There's almost contact, as that was almost his nose completely taken right off by Luke as they go through that essentially final turn. But I think Luke is holding off well, but Ben's still at this. Ben is not giving this up in 9th position. What's that 8th position back? And there's another oNiD car trying to make a move as well. That's 77. Dan Tomlinson being trying to be a bit opportunist here. There's a car in the background that's had a spin. That is Richard Ashford sadly dropping out this battle. He has faced the wrong way in through the cut through onto Wellington Straight, but crucially hasn't put into a wall. It has no damage. He will continue as we continue to watch this battle. And for now, Luca Monroe keeping ahead just about, and now may have a bit of breathing space as Holmes and Tomlinson look to start fighting one another as well.
Yeah, Ben Holmes wanted to get P8 back there, but in doing so almost opened the door for Dan Tomlinson to them through for P9. Luckily was able to hold on to P9, as we see a little bit of a lag moment there for Nigel Stock as they're trying to get past Adrian Rich into T1. It's going to be the outside, which we've seen hasn't quite worked so far, but Adrian Rich runs a bit wide and might actually let that move happen. They're still going to be side by side as they come to Maggots. Nigel on the inside, like Adrian Rich hanging it the long way round, trying to carry the momentum, which seems like it has worked indeed. And Adrian Rich holding on to P11 now, not making it easy for Nigel. As we look a little further in front, Luca Monroe still at the tail end of this battle. We know he has the pace, having won the first race of the evening. But Ben Holmes, with the slipstream, just able to hang on to the back of Luca Monroe.
Yeah, putting him along with them actually getting actually closing the gap to Erwin for position. But Erwin's also having a little bit of a fight with Morgan for P6. So if these pack of 3 cars can stick together for a little while, close the gap to Morgan and Erwin, and that gap's come down a little bit in the last lap as well.
Dan Tomlinson has run skits alongside Ben Holmes as we look back a replay from a lap or two ago into Maggots. This is how Ashford just lost the rear end of the cars we've seen many times throughout this season. But Dan Tomlinson has got the move done on Ben Holmes. That has dropped the pair of them off the back of Luca Monroe. And Ben Holmes has lost quite a bit more time, 2.5 back. Let's see a replay of this. Runs a little bit wide, does Ben Holmes, and finds the grass on the outside of the corner. That letting Dan Tomlinson take P9.
Very much so. That's move done and dusted now. I'm just having a look up the order a little bit. 5th and 6th fighting away for position, quite close to one another, as Ash Hill and Morgan are, Ash Hill and Pipers, should I say, fighting away. It's a next battle up from that. I do apologise, folks. They're going to be side by side for P4 and 5 onto the Wellington Straight, down into Luffield and Brooklands complex. Pipers taking a very offensive line into that first turn. We'll have Ash Hill taking the inside line, should I say. Pipers holds the outside line, I think, accepts his fate a little bit there.
Does seem like it. And we'll carry on. Mentioned Sophie sort of trying to hang on to P7. She's actually caught up to the back of Charlie Morgan and might be trying to take P6 rather than holding on to P7. Down, start finish straight towards Cops, closing in with the slipstream. Not quite close enough for a move there, but Charlie Morgan runs wide, spins on the outside curb, goes for a 360. Luckily, we'll get back going again before Luca Monroe has caught up here. Is there a little bit of damage? I think Charlie Morgan's carrying damage. That car doesn't seem to quite be straight, which is probably why Charlie Morgan is struggling for pace. Was being caught by Sophie and has ultimately made that mistake, though. Monroe has got past, though. Charlie Morgan instantly into slipstream. I think they might try and get P7 back into Brooklands. Monroe's just got to hold the inside line, and that is going to be P7 for them. Again, next car is Sophie once more, 4 seconds up the road, but Charlie Morgan thinking about if they can get past Luca Monroe, but will have Dan Tomlinson putting a lot of pressure on them as well.
Battle for the lead is getting mighty close as well. Oliver Stone's been able to close the gap to Ben Brown, as Ben's got to contend with a bit of a back marker. It's Jessica Perry moving out of the way, and now Oliver Stone looking to try and get back right on the town. This will be the fight for the lead, and the gap's closed dramatically.
Yeah, it was about 2.5 seconds when we last mentioned it, maybe about 10 minutes ago. Stone has just been gradually, bit by bit, eating away at it, and now it has come down to not slide on the inside from Ben Brown. We've seen the puddle there from the first race. The puddle itself might not be there, but the track is still very damp, and that has caused Ben Brown just running that tight line slide out wide and leave this race. Luca Monroe is getting caught up in that fight with Charlie Morgan, who's made their way through. Dan Tomlinson trying to follow through as well. They're going to be side by side through Woodcote here as they come on to the start finish straight. It looks like Charlie Morgan giving Monroe a bit of slipstream, pulls over, gives Dan a bit of slipstream, but not enough, as Ben Brown and Oliver Stone, I think, have maybe had it coming together as they drop down the order.
They have indeed. Ben Brown, Oliver Stone coming together, going into turn 2 and 3. We'll get a replay of it. We'll see what happened here. On the brakes they go, and around he goes as well, and that's a touch. And Oliver Stone's dropped to second. Stave has taken the lead. And
Ben immediately realising he was just a little too late on the brakes, right in, tucked behind Oliver Stone. No air on that front wing, didn't have the grip. The car runs into the back of Oliver Stone, and Ben Brown has lost a few more positions. Will obviously have front end damage from that. Oliver Stone will have a bit of rear end damage, but might get away with holding on to P2. Runs wide over the AstroTurf. You can see the spray coming off the water that still sits in there. But Ash Hill and Mike Pfeifers are fighting side by side themselves. They could be fighting for P2, but instead they're fighting over P3. Great cutback there from Pfeifers. And Ben Brown able, or at least trying to follow through here as they head towards Brooklands. Is going to pick up the slipstream from Pfeifers in front, and that will allow him to edge in front. He pulls over to the inside across Ash Hill nose to take P4. Running
That's
wide
Pfeifers.
is Pfeifers onto the AstroTurf, and he's given P3 back to Ben Ryan. Runs wide into the field, and Ash Hill is going to be through for P4. Luca Monroe has had issues and is dropping down the order themselves. They're facing the wrong way there in Brooklands.
it's all kicking off now. Oh, it's contact! Contact of 31.
Charlie Morgan on the inside for Luca Munro. We didn't see the start of that, whether Munro was trying to go for a dive to the inside, braking late, and that's how the cars came together. Either way, it's cost Luca Munro quite a bit of time. He'll probably have damage from that as well. You can imagine the same can be said for Charlie Morgan, but we'll wind the replay back and see how did this incident happen. Fighting slipstream for Munro, goes to the inside. Charlie Morgan defending the inside. Both of them just sort of not keeping straight. They're just moving around a bit and eventually find each other on the track. Yeah, not been a good time there for Luca Munro. Hard to say from that one angle who was moving around more, but it's a trip through pit lane for Munro as well as Charlie Morgan. Didn't quite see if that was instant point drive-through or to repair the damage. Have to imagine it was a drive-through for Munro, as they would have used their quick repair from that instant off the start line, where they got tagged by Ben Holmes.
Yeah, would have done for sure.
So yeah, hopefully the damage isn't too bad for Munro, but was been a great opening race this season. Munro, they've said themselves they've had their difficulties. They've maybe not been as clean as they would have liked to have in some battles, as being the one maybe on the short end of the stick, short end of the straw, especially at the start of this race. As Charlie Morgan, I imagine, coming back into the pits, this must be coming in to repair damage this time, having had to serve a drive-through last time round.
Had another spin. He goes into the corner. And he's going to get on the throttle. Have a spin, he is.
No, it's not even on the throttle.
No, he wasn't.
That was on the brakes as he turned the car in. I think the damage, just too substantial, has just ruined the balance of the car. Charlie Morgan not opting not to continue with it, as we see Peter Stather with the lead of the race, running a little bit wide there through Maggots Corner. That's going to allow Oliver Stone to close up a little bit gap. 2 seconds, but less than 4 minutes left in the race. There'll be 4 laps to go when they cross the line. Oliver Stone needs half a second a lap, and that just catches him up onto the back of Stather. Never mind making the overtake, and for a lap as short as this, half a second is a lot of time to ask. As long as Peter Stather can keep it clean, they should have this win. But having said that, commentator's curse might not happen. 3.5 tenths Oliver Stone gained last lap. That is not enough to win this race.
He needs to dig a lot deeper, and around a track as short as this, there's very few opportunities to dig deeper and find some time. However, Nigel Stock, hard to tell, has a very crooked front nose of Ben Holmes in the car 500 there, and he got damage obviously from other incidents from this race and not got to the pits to have it fixed, and maybe hurting him in the last 3.5 minutes or so. 2.5 minutes, should I say.
Yeah, race is quickly running out of time here. Down the Wellington Straight, Nigel Stock in the slipstream, having qualified and finished P4 for the qualifying and feature race. Might be a little bit disappointed being back here in P9, but they could elevate that to P. Peter Stather sets a personal best lap of the race out front, just to guarantee that they'll hold on in front of Oliver Stone, who was actually a little bit slower. Ben Holmes, though, has made a mistake, I imagine, wide out of T1 across the AstroTurf and has gone for a 360. Mike Pfeiffer's takes final podium position. Ash Hill takes P4. As we see a replay here of this, Ben Holmes sliding it in just slightly wide. You see his spray getting kicked up as he puts away onto the AstroTurf. Goes for a 180, spins back the other way. That was very close to collecting a car there.
It was.
I think that was Mike Pfeiffer's just making through, avoiding that. And I believe this is Sophie Arnwin just catching onto the back of Ben Brown, but not gaining the position, as we see a car in front going a little bit slowly. I think they had a moment, but I think that might be a lapped car that is in this train. For Toy has had an issue of themselves through T1. Exact same, runs wide, the car starts to slide. They collect the slide, but overcorrect straight into the wall. car absolutely destroyed.
Right.
So close to the end as well. Ben Brown is I'd say on the back. They actually have Ashford in between the two of them. Ashford really helping Ash Hill here just to help sort of fend off Ben Brown as Ray Short and Luca Munro have had it coming together through the field. Ben Holmes and Nigel Stock also fighting, and they've had an instant. Nigel Stock is off here at Maggots, all coming disaster at the end of this race as fireworks starting to go off, you could say.
Absolutely. Oh, it's all by himself. Nothing that the oNiD car did there. It was just all by himself. And then Luca Monroe, let's see what happened with him, as I think he's actually on his own.
Into the field here, brings it in quite early and just loses the rear end. And there was a car there spun on the outside already. I wonder if that just distracted Luca Munro and caused them to make that mistake.
Potentially all possible. Will however go on to the race leader Peter Staffer, the Road Sport International, having this final lap all to himself. Only one more corner to go, and we'll say congratulations. The checker flag will be raised for Stafer. Comes to the line. It's going to be race 2 win for Stafer. Finishes off this evening of racing. Congratulations to Stafer. Stone second. Pifers will be third, followed reasonably closely by Asher. I would say about 3 seconds. Actually, a fight for Erwin and Ben Brown coming to the line. Ben actually about to hold off Sophie for position, and that is about a 10th gap between them. Next battle is Adrian Rich, also fighting away with Nigel Stock as a back marker behind them, and they'll see the head of interest. They'll see the checkered flag very shortly, and they all come to the line. It's Rich for 9th, only about 2.2 of a second behind Ben Holmes. They come to the line, and we will see the last couple of cars to finish race. Jessica Perry, it's had a spin, and that's probably going to give Paige a free position for 15th. They come to the finish line. Is Paige going to have enough momentum? No, I think Paige has actually backed off and gets away with Perry
I
not
don't
getting
think
that
they were just
position.
quite close enough there on the final laps. 56.9, that's still reasonable lap time from Paige, so yeah, just a little too far back to take advantage of that late mistake from Jessica Perry.
Final results for the final race this evening here for round 6 here at Silverstone National.
That's the feature race results.
Is it?
It is.
That better.
There you go.
There we go. Peter Stafer. We got there in the end. Peter Stafer takes the win for Rev Sport International, Delta Sport, Oliver Stone second, Pifers third, Ash Hill fourth, Ben Brown fifth for oNiD Racing, United Sim Team Erwin in sixth, oNiD Racing 7th and 8th, Tomlinson Holmes respectively, Rich Nope, Stock 10th, Scurry 11th, Monroe United Sim Team in 12th, their teammates Erwin having a better evening of racing, but 13th will be Ashford, 14th Morgan, Rainbow Racing for Jessica Perry, Page 16th, only Sim Hound Academy, Berton for Terry in 17th, and Lewis Mason Aztec Racing 18th position. And that, folks, is the final race of the evening, all done and dusted. Oh, can we breathe? Just about, can't we?
Yeah, it's the sun sets here on Silverstone as the clouds have cleared. It's a lovely sunset, I must say, at Silverstone. Very peaceful with racing action done, but when the cars were on track, it was very chaotic. Blimey, yeah, some great racing, very difficult conditions. A lot of people just running a little bit wide, and the consequences were very severe, especially if you were for Toy that instant right at the end, just overcorrecting the car and basically turning it straight into the wall. Yeah, very difficult conditions, very well raced by a lot of our drivers. Some people will be quite happy with their race results. Some will have been left wanting a bit more, or a little bit disappointed in themselves or in something that happened with them to not have had as good of a result as they would have wanted.
Yeah, absolutely. It's going to be a live and learn race, especially with the changeable conditions for many. It was one of the first wet races we've had actually for this season. especially with the changing conditions. It's slowly drying out. It was a bit of a Russian roulette, let's say, to put on the dry tyres and for those folks to figure out what the hell they wanted to do for the race. They did eventually figure it out, bar a couple of spins, but the changeable British weather throwing a bit of a curveball for most here. Next week, we'll be back, same time, same place. We will be going to, I know it's not Spa, that's the final round in 2 weeks' time. And next week, we are
going to, I believe it's Brands Hatch. It is. We return to Brands Hatch for the second time this season. This time using the full Grand Prix layout. So a little bit of a longer lap, hopefully not as chaotic, but still challenging circuit, especially that back end. The addition that the Grand Prix circuit brings out some medium corners, very little room for error in them. It'll be interesting to see how our drivers get on for the penultimate round before we head to Spa for the final round, longest track of the season for sure. A little bit more room for error there, but yeah, plenty of straights for slipstreaming, which has been ever prevalent throughout this series. Should be a great way to end the season off.
Scotty, it's been a pleasure. 2 more races to go, but boy oh boy, weren't we in for a treat this week. And next week, Brands Hatch, an equally fantastic circuit, a bit more narrower, typical park circuit, let's say, Great British Park Circuit, that will test these drivers' skills to the limit. Until then, it's been a wonderful evening. Thank you so much for joining. We will see you all very, very soon. Take care and good night.